Hey guys, we're going to be painting some Easter eggs here, and I've gone ahead and drawn my little design of a dove holding an olive branch. It's going to say peace on the back. I'm keeping my designs really simple, as few elements as possible so that I can always add detail if I like, but as I paint, I only have to fill in the basics and it will be done if I want it to be done. Also, keeping them simple helps pull together the theme of all the eggs that I will be doing and keeps it cohesive. On the backs, I'm writing a single word that has to do with the symbol on the front. Here you can see my sketched in little bird, and I just used a pencil. Make sure you definitely sketch out your design before you start painting. It will save you a lot of headache because then you're just filling in the lines. I know that seems simple, but honestly, you can be tempted to skip the sketch and be sorry later. I'll take a quick moment to show you how I wipe off my brush. I just pull it and twist it back against my paper towel or napkin or whatever you have, and this keeps it in a nice sharp shape, and also it removes the liquid from the metal part of the brush so that it won't drip down when you're painting. Using a liner brush and some acrylic paint, any acrylic paint you have on hand will do just fine. You want to line up the tip of your brush into the tip of the leaf because it acts kind of like a little stamp and creates that nice sharp tip. Now, if you did it backwards, if you started at the base of the leaf and pulled out towards the tip, you would not get that sharp little edge as easily. I'm taking a little artistic license with this dove and painting it teal. I know that's not technically correct, but I like the look with the rest of the theme of my eggs. So with my brush, I am just dipping only the very tip of the brush into the paint. I don't want to get more than about a third of the brush covered in paint, and that helps me control the paint where I'm putting it a lot easier. You do have to dip back into the paint a little bit more often, but you're going to have a lot more control. Also, as you can see, I'm resting my hand down on my other hand or on the egg, and that helps keep my brush strokes steady. Also, as I go along the outer edge of the outline, I am using longer, smoother strokes. Now that's going to create a smoother edge for me, as opposed to doing little tiny strokes and connecting them all together. That's going to look a lot more jagged. As you can see, because of the finish on the egg, the paint is not sticking in a super thick matte version. It's actually kind of showing through the white, which I love because it's creating some texture in my dove. And in order to take advantage of that, I am using longer brush strokes and putting them in to fill in sections of where I want that definition. So along the top edge of the wing, I've got one long stroke, then a second stroke for the next part of the feather, and next one down for the next feather, and then for the tail, I've got two strokes that overlap each other. As you go along the outer edge, remember to use those longer brush strokes, get a smoother edge. And then sometimes it helps if you start with a little bit more paint on the inside of your item and then work the paint out towards the edge. And you can see I'm kind of pushing around the paint to create the dimension that I want using that see-through quality of the paint. I'm switching colors to yellow for my beak, and I washed out my brush and brought it to a nice sharp point, making sure to wipe off the extra liquid that was on the metal part of the brush too, because I don't want the water to drip down onto the tip of my brush and then onto the surface where I'm painting. It'll create a large puddle and make a mess. If I were wise, I would have waited and not started painting yellow next to blue while it was still wet. I would have worked on something else and let it have a chance to dry, but I am not very patient. So I added my yellow. I put a little highlight of white on the beak, and I'm not going for perfection here, but it just adds a little highlight, little dimension, little shine. For the eye on my bird, I'm using a teeny tiny bit of black paint on my tip of my brush. And then when I put the eye on, I put it up towards the top of the head and a little bit closer to the beak. Putting the eye too far back on the head will make it look a bit funky. Alright, On the side of the egg, I've got a little border that I drew using a rubber band. And I just used the width of the rubber band, traced around the outside edge on both sides. And now I'm painting it with some black paint. Now, because I was in a bit of a rush, I didn't take the time to water down my paint just a little bit. And so I got a pretty chunky and ugly line with my paint. What I always tell my students is that you need to water down your paint just a little bit, and that is going to create thin, smooth paint. Thin, smooth paint equals a thin, smooth line. Thick, chunky paint equals a thick, chunky line. And for some reason I thought I could defy that rule. Obviously, I'm no exception, and I got a chunky, ugly line. So using the thin paint is going to immensely improve my results here. No reason to worry about all the little nicks and bumps in your line. It does not need to be perfect. Excuse the noise in the background. I've got kids in here with me. But all of your little mistakes are going to get disguised by the details that we add in the next step. So just make your way around the egg as best you can. If you need to thicken up your line, you can do that as well. See, mine is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I'll show you in a minute. It is going to get covered up. So I don't get the best results when I'm holding my brush at a 90-degree angle. Usually it's a little bit better if I hold it at a 45-degree angle and kind of pull it with the paint trailing behind where my brush is moving, as you see in this little shot here. But you know, you get used to whatever works for you and whatever is comfortable. And just keep trying and you will get better with time. Here's the fun part where all of our mistakes start to blend in and get covered up. I started adding little dashes all along the inside of my two bands. Alternatively, you could also just fill in the two bands with one large strip of black, and that would work just fine as well. And then with the details that I'm adding on the outside of this band, you really start to lose any of the problem areas, and it all just comes together. Please excuse the noise, my kids are a little squirrely. One of my favorite tips for painting little dots is to use the back end of your paintbrush, to use the wooden part of the paintbrush instead of the soft bristles. And this creates a nice, smooth, round circle. And it's just a lot quicker and easier than using the floppy tip of the brush. All right, when you're going back into your details, whether it's adding anything to your drawing or to the edges, you're going to want to use a very small amount of paint on the tip of your brush and then only press down very, very lightly to control how thick that line gets. Resting your pinky down or your hand down on a surface or on your other hand is really going to help steady yourself when you're doing your lines. Here I'm outlining my bird, which I kind of wish I hadn't done. Less is more usually, but I had already committed with the beak, and so I decided to complete the bird. You can really call it a day with just these details. I've just done the bird and the edges, and I think it's simple and cute. You can add words to the back, add different designs on your borders, mix it up and put some leaves or flourishes, different colors. Sky's the limit. A few reminders when you go to paint your words. It's the same as painting any other thin line. You're not going to want to press your brush down all the way and try and force out any extra paint. Go ahead and just dip back in and use a very small tip of the brush with a thin watered down paint. That is going to give you the best results and the most control. Don't forget to rest your hand down. That's going to keep some of the shakiness away and control the amount of pressure that you're putting on your brush. Go ahead and sketch out your designs before you put them on your eggs. Try out different fonts, try out different styles, get comfortable with what you're doing, and then go ahead and get them on your eggs. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you learned something new. If you're looking for a way to encourage somebody this Easter, these make awesome gifts and it will bring a smile to anybody's face.